Picture this moment with me. You are standing in the middle of a wasteland made of flesh and absolute despair. The sky above you is not a sky anymore, but a bleeding eye, a crimson eclipse that has swallowed the sun and all the warmth of the world with it. Around you, the absolute worst nightmare imaginable has come to life. Your friends, the people you have bled with, the family you chose, are being torn apart by monstrosities that defy human comprehension. At the center of this abyss stands the one person you trusted more than anyone else in the universe, the man with the dream so blindingly bright you were willing to give your life for it, and he has just traded your souls to become a god. This is the eclipse. This is the absolute peak of darkness in the world of Berserk, and it is the moment where Kentaro Miura broke us all. But just as the last spark of humanity is about to be extinguished, just as the beast of absolute despair is about to swallow guts and Casca whole, the sky cracks open, not with light, but with something older, colder, and infinitely more metal. A skeleton on a spectral horse crashes through dimensions, wielding a sword of thorns, defying the God hand, defying causality, defying the absolute certainty of death. The Skull Knight. From the very first moment this enigmatic figure appeared, he captured our collective imagination. He speaks in riddles of fate and destiny. He moves through the astral layers like a ghost, and he seems to possess an intimate, painful knowledge of the exact struggle Guts is going through. For decades, we have accepted the standard lore. We have been told that the Skull Knight is the ancient king Geyserich, a monarch from 1,000 years ago who fell to a previous god hand, doomed to wander the astral realm as a spirit bound to metallic armor. That is the accepted truth. That is what the text seems to imply. But what if we look deeper? What if we strip away the assumptions and look at the terrifying, beautiful architecture of Miura's storytelling? What if I told you that the Skull Knight is not some random king from 1,000 years ago, but is actually Guts himself, sent back through the infinite spiral of time to save his own past self? I know how insane that sounds. I felt the exact same way the first time this puzzle piece clicked in my mind. But stick with me here, because once you see the threads connecting these two figures, the entire tapestry of Berserk changes. It stops being just a dark fantasy and becomes a profound, heartbreaking meditation on the eternal nature of human struggle. Kentaro Miura once spoke about the concept of time in Berserk, not as a straight line, but as a spiral. History repeats itself, but not exactly in the same way. The wheel turns, the same archetypes emerge, the same tragedies unfold, but each time with a slight variation. This is the very nature of causality in this universe. But what if the spiral is not just metaphorical? What if, at the absolute end of his journey, Guts realizes that the only way to prevent the ultimate victory of the God Hand is to become the very mechanism of causality itself? Think about the fundamental nature of the Skull Knight. He is driven by a singular, unquenchable fury against the God Hand, specifically targeting Void. He consumes Behelits. He fights a war that seems completely impossible to win. Does that sound familiar? It is the exact same path Guts is walking. Guts lives only by the strength of his sword, swimming in an ocean of blood, fighting a battle that every rational law of the universe says he should lose. We know for an absolute fact that the Skull Knight was the previous wearer of the Berserker Armor. The manga confirms this. The armor that is currently slowly consuming Guts, eating his humanity away bit by bit, breaking his bones and drinking his blood, was once the second skin of the Skull Knight. When Guts first puts on the armor, The helmet shapes itself into the head of a wolf, the beast of darkness that lives inside his own psyche. But before that, what was the shape of the helmet? It was a skull, the exact same skull that the knight wears now. We are told the previous owner fought until every last drop of his blood was spilled and his bones were shattered. We assume that owner was Geiserik, but consider the relationship between the witch Flora and the Skull Knight, which perfectly mirrors the bond between Shirke and Guts. Flora calls the Skull Knight her dear friend, someone she has shared a profound history with. Shirke is forming that exact same bond with Guts right now. The parallels are not just thematic, they are aggressively literal. Every step Guts takes is a step directly into the footprints of the Skull Knight. So, let us ask the hard question. If Guts continues down this path, if he continues to sacrifice his own body, if the brand on his neck continues to pull him deeper into the astral abyss, what is his final form? It is not a peaceful retirement. It is not a happy ending in a cottage. His final form is to become a creature of pure will, a spectre sustained by nothing but the desire to oppose evil. He becomes the Skull Knight. The emotional weight of this realization is absolutely staggering when you sit with it. It means that the man who saves Guts at the eclipse is actually Guts himself, looking at the moment of his own ultimate trauma. Imagine the absolute heartbreak of that moment. You are a being outside of time, and you have to travel back to the exact second where the love of your life was violated, where your best friend betrayed you, where all your comrades were slaughtered, and you have to relive it just to ensure your younger self survives to continue the cycle. It recontextualizes the Skull Knight's distant, cold demeanor. He is not just being cryptic because he is an ancient ghost. He is looking at his younger self, knowing the ocean of pain that is waiting for him. He warns Guts about the nature of his desires, telling him that what he wishes for may not be what Casca wishes for. How would he know the intimate, specific nature of their relationship unless he lived it? Unless he carries the memory of Casca's broken mind in his own hollow chest? We see our own lives in this dynamic, do we not? How often do we look back at our younger selves, at the naive dreams we had, at the nightmares we did not see coming, and wish we could reach through time to warn ourselves, to brace ourselves for the impact of reality? The Skull Knight is the ultimate manifestation of that human desire. He is the guardian angel born from the depths of hell. But Miura's genius does not stop at simple time travel tropes. Berserk is not a sci-fi series. It is a story about the intersection of the physical and astral worlds. In the astral world, time does not function like it does in the physical world. The deeper you go into the abyss, the more concepts like past, present, and future lose their meaning. Slan hints at this. The God Hand exists outside the normal flow of time. If Guts reaches a state of existence where he transcends his physical body, perhaps at the moment of his death, inside the Berserker armor, his spirit, fueled by an endless well of rage and determination, could be bound to a new metallic form by a powerful magic user, say, an older Shirke, or perhaps Dannan, the elf queen. Once untethered from linear time in the deepest layers of the astral world, this new entity could navigate the spiral of causality backward. This completely reframes the tragedy of Guts' journey. We watch him struggle. We root for his humanity. We pray that he does not lose himself to the beast of darkness. But this theory suggests that the tragedy is already sealed. He does lose his body. He does lose his mortal life. But the triumph, the absolute mind-blowing victory of the human spirit in Berserk, is that even in death, even after losing everything, Guts does not stop fighting. He becomes an immortal idea, a skeletal force of nature that will haunt the God Hand until the end of eternity. It transforms the narrative from a simple quest for revenge into a cosmological war for the soul of the universe. And think about the thematic resonance. Guts is the struggler, the one who leaps against the current of fate. Causality dictates that the God Hand rules supreme. For the Skull Knight to be Guts from the future, it means Guts found the one blind spot in causality. He used the very spiral of time that the God Hand relies on to create a paradox. He inserts himself into his own history to ensure the struggle continues. He becomes the living embodiment of the concept of resistance. This speaks so deeply to anyone who has ever felt overwhelmed by the world. It is the realization that the struggle itself is the victory. Guts does not need to kill Griffith tomorrow to win by simply surviving, by refusing to lay down and die, by returning from the future to ensure his own survival. He has already defeated Griffith's philosophy. Griffith believes in absolute control, in a destiny that places him at the top. Guts represents the chaotic, uncontrollable nature of human willpower. But if the Skull Knight is Guts, then who is King Geyserich? We are told the Skull Knight is Geyserich. Void addresses him as Your Majesty. How do we reconcile this? This is where the puzzle gets incredibly exciting. Remember that history in Berserk repeats in a spiral. 1,000 years ago, there was an empire, an emperor, a sage who was tortured in a tower, and an eclipse. That was the previous cycle. What if Guts, thrust backward in time, arrived 1,000 years in the past? What if, to gather the strength and resources needed to oppose the God Hand of that era, this time-displaced Guts united the continent and became the figure history remembers as King Geyserich? He wore the skull helmet because that was his armor. He was brutal, yes, but he was driven by a mission no one else could understand. He was not a tyrant for the sake of power, but a man out of time trying to build a fortress against the darkness. It makes the connection to Void even more personal. If Void is the sage who was tortured by Geyserich, and Geyserich is Guts, then Guts inadvertently created the very God Hand member he now hunts, creating the ultimate loop of causality. Every single detail aligns with this. The way the Skull Knight looks at Guts is not the look of a detached observer. It is the look of profound, agonizing empathy. When he saves Guts at the eclipse, he holds him. For a brief second, this terrifying skeletal monster shows immense gentleness. Because he is holding himself. He is holding the last remnant of his own innocence before it was burned away by the brand. We are looking at a story of a man who loves his companion so much that he will cross 1,000 years of time just to give them a fighting chance. But this revelation brings us to the edge of an even darker precipice. If the Skull Knight is Guts from the future, and he is still fighting, still failing to strike down Void after 1,000 years, does that mean the struggle is ultimately futile? Does it mean that no matter how hard we fight, we are trapped in the same cycles of suffering? This is the central tension of Miura's masterpiece, the conflict between destiny and choice. Are we doomed to repeat our traumas, or can we break the cycle? The Skull Knight seems trapped in his own loop. He saves Guts. Guts grows. Guts puts on the armor. Guts dies. Guts becomes the Skull Knight. It is a terrifying Ouroboros of pain. We look at this, and we feel the weight of our own repeating mistakes, the generational traumas we carry, the cycles we desperately want to break in our own lives. But wait, there is a flaw in the loop, a beautiful, glorious flaw. Because in this current cycle, things are slightly different. The spiral has shifted. In the past, Flora and the Skull Knight failed, but in this present moment, Guts has something the Skull Knight did not have. He has a new family. He has Shirka, Farnese, Serpico, Isidro. He has Casca, who has had her mind restored. The variables have changed. The Skull Knight, by saving Guts, may have introduced the very element that will finally break the loop of causality. He may be Guts from the future, but the Guts of the present is now forging a new destiny. This is the ultimate cliffhanger of the human experience. We are standing at the threshold of the unknown, staring into the abyss, wondering if our choices matter. And in the world of Berserk, the answer lies hidden in the astral realm, waiting to be uncovered. But to understand how Guts actually breaks this loop, we have to look closer at the most iconic weapon in anime history, the Dragon Slayer, and a secret property it holds that changes everything about the future. Welcome back to the Abyss. In our last chapter, we stood at the edge of a massive revelation, the idea that the Skull Knight is not just an ancient king, but Guts himself, sent spiraling back through 1,000 years of time. We left off looking at the Dragon Slayer, the massive slab of iron that has become as iconic as the Black Swordsman himself. To understand the final piece of this temporal puzzle, we have to understand what this sword actually is, and more importantly, what it is becoming. Godo, the blacksmith who forged it, called it a useless slab of iron, something too heavy and absurd for any normal human to wield. And for a long time, that is exactly what it was, a physical object, a very heavy sword. But as Guts began his endless hunt against the apostles, slicing through the flesh of monsters day after day, night after night, something shifted. Shirka observes later in the story that the Dragon Slayer is no longer just a physical weapon. It exists in the interstice. By being constantly bathed in the blood of astral creatures, the sword has absorbed their malice, their darkness, and their fury. It has become a cursed blade capable of cutting through spirits, magic, and the fabric of the astral world itself. Now, compare this to the ultimate weapon of the Skull Knight, the sword of actuation, a blade forged by swallowing behalates, which are essentially crystallized drops of human despair and ambition from the deepest layers of the astral world. The sword of actuation can literally cut open the fabric of space and time. It slices through causality itself. Do you see the parallel? If Guts is destined to become the Skull Knight, then the Dragon Slayer is the larval form of the sword of actuation. Every time Guts swings that iron slab, every time he spills apostle blood, he is unknowingly feeding the blade, transforming it into the dimensional weapon he will one day need to navigate the spiral of time. This is not just cool lore. It is a devastatingly beautiful metaphor for how we carry our own burdens. The sword gets heavier not just physically, but spiritually. It carries the weight of every nightmare Guts has faced, the blood of his enemies, the memory of his trauma. It all gets baked into the steel he carries on his back. How many of us feel that exact same way about our own past? We carry the weight of our struggles, our regrets, the battles we fought to survive. Over time, that weight changes us, it shapes our defenses, and it becomes the very tool we use to face the future. Guts is weaponizing his own trauma, and in doing so, he is walking the exact path the Skull Knight walked. But here is where the story shifts from a dark loop of eternal suffering into the most triumphant declaration of human willpower ever written. If the Skull Knight is Guts from the future, trapped in a 1,000-year loop of trying to defeat Void and the God Hand, then Why has he not succeeded? Why does history keep repeating? Because the God Hand controls causality. They control the board. They know every move before it is made. Because human desire is predictable. Griffith's dream was predictable. The sacrifice at the eclipse was predictable. But there is one thing the God Hand cannot predict. The human heart, specifically, the capacity for unconditional love in the face of absolute darkness. In the previous cycles, the Skull Knight, the original Guts, likely became consumed entirely by the beast of darkness. He likely gave in to his fury, let the Berserker Armor swallow him whole, and became a weapon of pure vengeance. Vengeance is easy for the God Hand to manipulate. It is just another dark emotion. But the Guts we are watching right now, our Guts, made a different choice on the Hill of Swords. He chose to stop hunting Griffith and instead protect Casca. He chose love over revenge. He chose his humanity over the beast. That choice changed the timeline. It created a ripple in the ocean of causality that the God Hand did not foresee. And this brings us to the ultimate anomaly. The Moonlight Boy, the child of Guts and Casca, tainted by the darkness of the eclipse but still fundamentally bound to them by love. This child shares a body with Griffith now. It is the ultimate cosmic irony. The god of this new world is bound to the son of the man he betrayed. In the original loop, the Skull Knight loop, Casca likely never recovered. The boy was just another tragic casualty. But because the current Guts chose the path of healing, Casca's mind was restored on the island of the elves. The variables are completely different now. The Skull Knight watches Guts not just with empathy, but with a growing sense of awe. He is seeing his past self make choices he never thought possible. He is seeing his younger self succeed where he failed. This is the catharsis we have been waiting for, the realization that our destiny is not fixed. We can look at the worst mistakes of our past, the darkest cycles of our family history, and we can choose to be the generation that breaks the curse. Guts is breaking a millennium-old curse just by refusing to let go of his humanity. When we realize this, the entire philosophy of Berserk opens up. It is not a story about the inevitability of suffering. It is a story about the absolute necessity of the struggle. Miura is telling us that the world is brutal, the universe is indifferent, and the monsters are real. The eclipse happens. We all face moments where our world ends, where our dreams are shattered, where the brand of sacrifice is burned into our skin by the cruelties of life. But the answer to that cruelty is not to become a monster yourself. The answer is not to abandon your humanity to become a god, like Griffith did. The answer is to pick up the impossibly heavy sword, stand in front of the people you love, and scream at the darkness until it backs down. The Skull Knight represents what happens when the struggle consumes you. He is the ghost of pure resistance, admirable but ultimately hollow, stripped of his flesh and his ability to feel warmth. He is the ultimate sacrifice for the cause. But Guts represents the hope that we can fight the monsters without becoming them. When Guts looks at the Skull Knight, he is looking at his own potential doom. He is looking at the abyss staring back at him. And yet, he keeps walking, he keeps fighting, he keeps bleeding, because as long as there is a spark of life left in his body, the future is unwritten. This is the genius of Kentaro Miura. He created a world so impossibly dark that the tiniest flicker of human warmth feels like a blinding sun. Think about the campfire of dream speech. Guts believes he has no dream, that he is just a man warming himself at the fires of others. But his dream was the hardest one of all. His dream was just to survive, to protect his own agency in a world that wanted to take it away. By becoming the Skull Knight in one timeline, Guts proved that his willpower could outlast the stars. By breaking the loop in another, he proved that love is stronger than fate. We are the explorers of this dark narrative, and what we find at the bottom of the abyss is not a monster, but a mirror. We see our own capacity for darkness, our own beast waiting in the shadows. We see our own furious desire to fight against an unfair world, but we also see our immense, beautiful capacity to heal, to build new families out of broken pieces, to find a Shirke, a Farnese, or an Isidro in our own lives, to help carry the load when the armor gets too heavy. Berserk does not offer easy answers because life does not offer easy answers. It just offers the struggle, and it tells us that the struggle is enough. The struggle is sacred. So, the next time you see the Skull Knight appear on the page, riding through a tear in reality to save the day, do not just see a cool skeleton. See a man who loved his friend so much, he fought death to a standstill. See the ultimate manifestation of the human spirit, refusing to be extinguished. And when you look at Guts, battered, bleeding, and exhausted, know that you are looking at the man who will finally set that spirit free. We carry the brand of our own mortality, our own limitations, but we also carry the sword. We make the choices. The spiral turns, but we decide how we walk it. And in that realization, the darkness of Berserk becomes the most profound light in all of fiction. Now, as we stand at the end of this journey, I want you to ask yourself, what is your dragon slayer, and what will you choose to do with the strength it has given you?